You ever meet someone and it hits you so hard that your chest feels like it's going to split wide open? That was me, standing outside the University of Michigan library on a late September afternoon, watching the leaves tumble across the cracked sidewalk. She was sitting on the bench opposite me, sketchbook in hand, hair catching the sunlight like it had its own little halo. Her name was Emily. I remember thinking, wow, she's different, and I wasn't wrong. She had that effortless confidence, that kind of calm that made everyone else seem hurried, panicked, small. I was a journalism major, barely keeping up with classes, working shifts at a greasy diner down the street, and here she was, sketching things that probably looked better than anything I could ever write. Our first conversation was stupidly ordinary. "Hey," I said, leaning against the bench like I belonged there. "Hey," she replied, without looking up. Do you always hang around libraries looking creepy?" I laughed, which I swear made me look more awkward than charming. "No, I'm just, doing people-watching research." She smirked. "Research, huh? Cool. I'm Emily." "Matt," I said. Simple. Honest. But my brain was doing cartwheels. Something about the way she looked at me, like she was trying to figure me out without saying a word, made me feel exposed and alive at the same time. We started running into each other a lot. Coffee shop mornings became a routine neither of us planned. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, sipping lattes, watching the city wake up. Other times, we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Favorite books, terrible movies, dreams too big to say aloud. I could feel the pull growing stronger each day, the quiet tension that buzzed like static electricity between us. Summer came, and Emily went back to Colorado for an internship. I stayed in Ann Arbor, working nights at Joe's Diner, flipping pancakes for college kids and truck drivers. The city felt emptier without her, like someone had dimmed the lights, and I didn't know how to turn them back on. I started writing letters, not emails, not text messages, letters, long, messy letters that spilled every thought, every feeling I couldn't bring myself to say out loud. I'd sit in my tiny apartment, the hum of the heater and the smell of coffee, filling the room, pen scratching against paper as I told her about the mundane and the profound. "Emily, I keep seeing your laugh in my head when I close my eyes at work. I keep imagining you sitting here, sketching away while I burn another stack of pancakes. I don't know why I can't just tell you this, but I'm scared it'll ruin what we have." I folded the letters carefully, stacked them on my dresser, and stared at them every night. By fall, she was back. Michigan was crisp and golden, the streets littered with leaves, the air smelling faintly of wet asphalt and coffee. I saw her at the bookstore, fingers brushing against the spines of sketchbooks. She looked up, saw me, and that smile, that ridiculous, perfect smile, hit me in the chest. We started spending weekends together, wandering through campus, laughing at stupid things, sharing burgers at late-night diners. I loved the sound of her voice when she thought I wasn't listening, the way she crinkled her nose when she laughed too hard. One evening, at a diner near the highway, she asked me, "You've been kind of quiet lately. Everything okay?" I wanted to tell her about the letters, every single word I'd written, every confession I'd buried in paper and envelopes, but I couldn't. I just nodded. "Yeah, busy." She smiled, but I could see the shadow of doubt flicker in her eyes. Winter came, as harsh as it always does in Michigan. Snow fell heavy, frosting the streets and freezing over the lake. We spent nights in my apartment, curled up on the couch, hot chocolate in hand, the lights from passing cars casting long streaks across the walls. I wanted to hold her, to tell her how much I loved her, but fear kept my words trapped. January hit, and she left again. Colorado this time. I drove her to Detroit Metro Airport, the long highway stretching between us like an endless river of asphalt and regret. She leaned her head against the window, eyes lost in the snowy horizon. I wanted to tell her to stay. I wanted to shout, "I love you." But all I said was, "Text me when you land," and I watched her disappear behind the glass doors. I wrote more letters that night, hundreds maybe, each one a confession, a secret, a heartbeat poured onto paper. And yet, I didn't send them. Fear, pride, maybe just cowardice kept them hidden. Spring rolled in, melting snow into rivers and puddles. I got a job offer in Chicago. I told myself it was just work, just another step. But the thought of leaving Michigan and leaving her made my chest tighten, like someone had pressed their hand over my heart. Then, one evening, I got a text that made me drop the pen I was holding. "Hey, can we talk?" It was from her. My chest jumped, heart hammering like it had its own rhythm. I called immediately, and we stayed on the phone for hours. She told me about Colorado, her projects, the little things that made her happy. I told her about Chicago, the diners, the streets, the people who became faces in my routine. It was the first time in months that I felt the distance shrink, if only for a moment. We decided she'd come to visit. Chicago, my new apartment, the city lights buzzing around us like a living, breathing organism. I waited at the window, staring at the skyline, nerves twisting in my stomach. And when she walked in, the world stopped. Her eyes found mine instantly. I knew she knew. But love, even when it feels right, isn't simple. There's always timing. There's always distance. There's always fear. That weekend, we walked Millennium Park, arguing playfully about the best deep dish pizza in town, sharing hot pretzels, laughing like we hadn't a care in the world. I could feel the old spark, the same one from Michigan, burning brighter now. But I knew it couldn't last forever. Colorado awaited her, and Chicago awaited me. The night before she left, we went to my rooftop. The city sprawled beneath us, lights flickering like fireflies, the wind sharp against our faces. I held her hand and finally whispered, "Emily, I've been writing you letters, hundreds. I never sent them. I've loved you since that bench outside the library, and I can't stop." Her eyes glimmered in the dim city light. "I know," she said simply. "I've always known." We kissed under the stars, the kind of kiss that makes your chest ache and your knees weak. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Then came Monday. Reality. We hugged at O'Hare Airport, the flight board flashing her gate. I wanted to scream, to pull her back, to tell her to stay forever. But she smiled, a sad, knowing smile, and said, "This isn't goodbye." I drove home that night in silence, the city lights blurring past me, snow melting on the windshield. I kept writing letters. Now, though, I wrote about our weekends, our calls, the small things I missed, and for the first time, I sent them. Every week, a letter to Colorado, a thread keeping us connected across the miles. The road ahead was long, the distance brutal, but for the first time, I felt hope. Spring in Chicago had this way of making everything feel alive again. The river sparkled under the afternoon sun. Joggers ran along the paths, with earbuds blasting music, and the smell of street vendors' pretzels and roasted nuts filled the air. I still remembered her text that morning. "I'm coming this weekend. Pack your heart. Don't lose it." I laughed when I read it, but inside, my chest was doing backflips. After months of letters, calls, and stolen weekends, she was finally coming to Chicago. And I was terrified. Terrified that the magic of our letters couldn't survive reality. Friday afternoon, I waited outside my apartment building. Wind swept along the streets, tossing stray pieces of paper and empty coffee cups into gutters. And then I saw her, Emily, walking toward me, suitcase in hand, hair tied back, but strands catching the sunlight. She smiled that smile, the one that made every nerve in my body tingle, and I realized I hadn't breathed properly in over a month. "Matt," she said, her voice carrying over the bustling street. "Emily," I breathed, feeling like my knees might give out. We hugged, like we'd been gone for years instead of just months. Her warmth pressed into me, and all the fears I'd carried melted away. We pulled back and laughed, that ridiculous giddy laugh that only happened when it was just us. That weekend was stolen from the universe. We walked the city streets hand in hand, sharing ice cream cones, arguing over which Chicago-style hot dog was truly the best, and talking for hours in coffee shops that smelled of vanilla and old books. At night, we'd sit on my balcony, city lights below twinkling like a sea of stars. I watched her sketch the skyline, her pencil dancing across the page, and I thought about how someone so far away could feel like home. She caught me staring once and grinned. "Thinking about your next letter?" she teased. "I might be," I admitted. "I keep writing, even when you're right here." She shook her head, laughing softly. "You're ridiculous." And then she leaned into me, resting her head on my shoulder. But reality always has a way of sneaking in, doesn't it? Sunday evening, her suitcase was packed, waiting by the door. Colorado was calling her back, and I knew, as we hugged at the airport, that this goodbye would feel heavier than the others. "I hate this part," I whispered, holding her tight. "Me too," she said, pressing her forehead to mine. "But we'll see each other again, soon." Weeks passed. I threw myself into work in Chicago, writing stories for the city paper, wandering the streets at night after long shifts, letters stacked on my desk like old memories. And every Sunday, I'd send her one, handwritten, honest, sometimes funny, sometimes desperate, always full of heart. "In Colorado," she wrote back. Her words came alive in my apartment, little drawings of mountains, scribbled jokes about her coworkers' terrible coffee, and the most heartfelt confessions about how much she missed me. Reading them, I felt close to her, even when she was thousands of miles away. Then came July. Summer heat in Chicago pressed down like a heavy blanket. I was walking along the Lake Michigan shoreline, the wind tugging at my hair, thinking about her, when my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "I need to see you. Can I?" I didn't hesitate. I booked a flight the next day, driving across highways and state lines, heart pounding like a drum. When I finally arrived in Denver, the city glittered under the late afternoon sun. But all I saw was her, standing outside her apartment, hair catching the golden light, smiling that same smile that had haunted me for months. "Matt," she breathed, running into my arms. "Emily," I said, hugging her tighter than I ever thought possible. We spent the weekend like no time had passed, hiking in the Rockies, laughing at my terrible sense of direction, stealing fries from each other's plates in small, ridiculous battles. And yet, there was an unspoken weight. We both knew the distance still existed, still looming over us like a storm waiting to break. One night, sitting on a cliff overlooking the city lights far below, I pulled her into my lap. Emily, I've never stopped thinking about you. Not once. Every letter I wrote, every word I didn't say, it was all for you. She looked at me, tears shining in the corner of her eyes. I know, Matt, and every letter I sent you, every word I wrote, it was all for you too. We kissed under the stars, a long, trembling kiss that tasted of hope, longing, and everything we'd been holding back. That night, we talked until the sky bled into dawn, confessing fears, dreams, everything we'd buried under distance and silence. Back in Chicago, I kept writing letters, but now they were different. I wasn't afraid anymore. Every word was sent, every thought shared. We built our bridge across states, each letter a plank, sturdy and strong, holding us together through months of work, study, and life's chaos. Fall came again, and with it, a rhythm. Visits became monthly pilgrimages, each reunion a flood of laughter and tears. We discovered hidden diners off the highways, little bookstores tucked in alleys, and quiet lakes where the world seemed to pause. And then came a night that changed everything. I had finished my shift at the diner, driving home on the rain-slicked streets of Chicago, headlights reflecting off puddles like molten gold. My phone buzzed. It was Emily. "I can't wait any longer," she said, voice trembling. "I'm moving to Chicago. I'm done with the distance." I slammed the brakes at the red light, rain soaking my jacket. "You're serious?" I whispered. "Yes," she said, and I could hear the tremor of relief in her voice. "I'm done missing you. I'm done pretending like this is okay." We spent that night planning her move, imagining an apartment near the lake, nights spent cooking together, mornings with coffee and newspapers, evenings on rooftops watching the city glow. The idea that distance could no longer touch us filled me with a joy I didn't know I could feel. A month later, she arrived, driving her through the streets of Chicago, pointing out new murals, sharing memories of our past weekends. I realized something profound. The letters, the longing, the months of waiting, they had all been worth it. Every ounce of fear, every tear shed alone, had led us here. We unpacked her things together in that small apartment near the lake. She unpacked her sketchbooks. I set my letters on the shelf, not to hide, but to honor. Every unsent word, every confession trapped in ink and paper had led to this moment. And now, there was no distance capable of keeping us apart. That night, we sat on the balcony, city lights stretching below, and I finally spoke the words I'd held in my heart for years. "Emily, I've loved you since that bench outside the Michigan library. I loved you when you were in Colorado, when I was in Chicago. I love you now, and I'll love you every day for the rest of my life." She took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "I've loved you too, Matt. Always." We kissed under the stars, not the hurried, nervous kisses of before, but slow, deep, deliberate. Every emotion, every struggle, every lonely night filled that kiss with meaning. Years later, we still keep the letters, tucked away in a box, the ink fading, the edges curling. We don't need them to connect anymore, but they remind us of everything we survived. The distance, the silence, the fear, proof that love can stretch across states, across time, across fears, and still find the person it's meant for. And every time I read one, I remember the bench, the library, the coffee shop mornings, the snow in Michigan, the highways that seemed endless. I remember the way she made my chest ache with longing, and the way I finally let her in. Love isn't always about the right timing. Sometimes it's about surviving the wait, about holding on until the moment you finally can. And that's the story of the letter he never sent.